The fire type is an amazing typing full of many powerful and fantastic Pokemon. The only issue is they can be rather scarce. In fact, in some games, you can't even get a full team of them. But regardless, I want to do a Hardcore Nuzlocke with them. We start off our adventure with a rarity in these challenges. I actually get to keep my starter Pokemon being Fennekin. I decide to give it the name Branch because I think it's quite fitting. Before we go any further though, I've got to go and say goodbye to my trusty Rhydon. Don't look at me like that. We can then carry on to the point where we can get our first encounter being a Fletchling. The only issue with it isn't actually a fire type yet, so we can't use it right now. We catch it and give it the name Hay. We then progress a little further into the woods, and I'll tell you what, all these monkeys have the same encounter rate, yet I ran into the other two about 5 times before I eventually found mine. The Pansear makes for quite an easy catch and it gets the name Gas. I then get bullied for not owning a pair of roller skates. Therefore, we have no option but to destroy her and take hers. After that, we have the first gym battle. Now, it's a bug-type gym, so you might think it's quite easy, but it's actually the opposite. She starts off with Surskit, which happens to know Bubble and Water Sport. This means any fire-type moves I try to use are going to be fairly redundant. Because of this, on the first turn, I decide to use Howl. I then go to set up another Howl, but instead of using Bubble, she actually uses Quick Attack, which is great for us. The idea from then is I can use a couple scratches to knock her low on health. However, I get unfortunate, the first bubble she uses actually manages to lower my speed. Now this means I'm actually slower than it now. However, on the next one, it doesn't manage to take me out and I knock it into the red. At this point, she's low enough where I know she's going to use a potion, therefore I opt to use Tail Whip against it. By the time it gets to this point, the Water Spout actually ends, and that means I know the next turn she's going to use setting up another one. That means I'm allowed to get off one free hit with a scratch. Now, normally I would have stayed in and taken this out and then switched out once the Pavilion came in, but unfortunately I got my speed lowered, which has made it so I can't get the first hit. Therefore, in order to preserve Branch's life, I need to switch out. Thankfully, because I was so low, he ends up using Quick Attack on the turn that Gas comes out. This means I'm free to use one lick and I've taken it out. Pavilion then comes out. Now the Water Sport is still up, so the first 2 Incinerates I managed to use do very pitiful damage. However, the moment it disappears, we wipe the floor with it. So even though we did get a bit of bad luck, we still managed to secure the win. I then progress a bit further and I'm actually told about the Fairy type.
I am shocked! Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
Then, as we continue on our journey, we are introduced to the best looking Pokemon professor of all time. That's right, it's Oak. We then get gifted another member for our team, being Charmander. I end up giving him the name Charcoal. And at the same time, we get given the Mega Stone for him. Possibly one of the best looking Megas of all time. I then try to travel a bit more around Lumio City, but there's a power cut. Yeah. Sure looks like it, buddy. As we're progressing further, Branch evolves into Braixen. After this, we try to go to a mansion and we get extortioned. I suppose you've got to keep them Golden Gate shiny somehow. Since we've paid for that, we might as well stop and watch the fireworks show. I'll tell you what, as they're coming down, this reminds me of something.
Swords of Revealing Light!
As we progress a bit further, Charcoal evolves into a Charmeleon, and Hay evolves into a Fletchinder, meaning we can now use it as it's gained its fire type. I then can carry on a little bit longer where we run into a horde of Houndour. I gradually take them down one by one, and the one I catch, I end up giving the name Paper. Paper's very eager to be part of this team, therefore evolves into a Houndoom. And just before I'm about to fight the gym leader, I decide it's time to give a Firestone to Gas and make him into a Simisear. With all that out of the way, it is time to take on the second gym leader, being Rock-type. He starts off with Amora, and I start off with Gas. On the first turn, I want a bit of chip damage on this thing, therefore I decide to use Flame Burst as it paralyzes me with a Thunder Wave. Then on the next turn, it does pretty minor damage with a takedown as I use a Yawn. I then use a Flame Burst, which doesn't quite manage to take it out, and it uses another takedown, but again, it does very minor damage. At this point though, he's fallen asleep, therefore I decide to bring out Charcoal. On that turn, he does heal up, but it doesn't really matter too much to us. We've got Charcoal, and he's got Dragon Rage, a move which is guaranteed to kill it in 2 shots, Therefore, as long as he stays asleep the next turn, we're fine. Thankfully, Amora is quite vain and wanted that beauty sleep, meaning we could take it out with no trouble. After that, all we've got left is his Tyrant. Now, this thing's a pretty strong Pokemon, so instead of attacking it and doing 40 damage with Dragon Rage, I actually decide to use a Growl to allow the Pokemon I'm going to send out to survive. Obviously, the Rock Tomb does hit us heavy, but it actually lowers our speed as well, meaning we don't get the opportunity to use a second Growl and just switch in Paper. Now, the idea with Paper is just to get a very minimal bit of chip damage on it with Bite, but thankfully the first one I use actually flinches. This means I'm safe to do another, which knocks him less than half health as he knocks me into the red. Obviously, staying in at this point is incredibly risky, therefore I opt to bring Branch out. And because of how low I was on health, he actually uses a Bite on the turn I come in. That unfortunately seals his fate, so all I need to do now is use one Psybeam, and it's enough to take him down. That's definitely one of the scarier gyms, but we managed to get through it with 0 casualties. We then have a fight with Karina, but is really good at cleaning the room and getting rid of her Lucarios. And with the nose on them, I don't blame him. It must be horrible for that sort of smell. I then get asked if I want to do a Sky Battle.
How about no?
I then run into the Mega Evolution Guru, but it gives us an ultimatum. Only one of us is allowed to know about it, me or Serena. Unfortunately for Serena, I've learnt the ability of dancing with swords. Therefore, like a gallant knight, I strike on through her for the victory. And with that, we're now ready to take on Karina. I lead with Gas as she leads with Mindfu. It does a nice bit of chip damage to me with Fake Out, however, on the next turn, I do get the Yawn off. From here, I decide to use Play Nice to try and counteract the power-up punches he's been using, but by the time I get him neutral again, he actually manages to wake up. Now, I want him asleep, so I use another Yawn, but I don't want to risk him getting too many power-up punches off, therefore I decide it's time to bring out Hay. However, this proved to be a mistake, as when I bring out Hay, he gets burned. This means the Yawn I've just set up won't have effect, and we can't get him to sleep. However, one good thing about Burn is it does halve his attack. This means I'm able to set up 3 Swords Dance. I then try to Roost to be somewhat healthy in case my calculations are wrong, but he's actually doing some mega damage to us. Therefore, I decide it's probably time to give up on that and just take him out with a Peck. Now, I've got 3 times boosted attack, and Machoke is weak to a Peck also, therefore he goes down. And then her last Pokemon, Howlucha, comes out. Unfortunately for her though, he stands no chance against the Mighty Beak, and we've swept her entire team. With 3 gym badges down, we then have to do another battle using Mega Evolution this time. I managed to find a hidden type, Fire-type Lucario to use in this battle, just to stay with the run, and it makes very quick work of hers. The Lucario then gives me a thorough stare down and asks to come with me. Now, just look at them eyes. There's no way you can say no to that, so I had to say yes. I progress a little bit further and discover how absolutely adorable a sleeping Skiddo is. Just look at it and how gorgeous it is just led there. I'm then carrying on further, but unfortunately I actually end up overleveling my Hay, therefore it evolves into a Talonflame. And as you can see here, I did a awful job at XP management. I actually only had 1 Pokemon that was fit to be used in this gym battle. Thankfully for me though, the next gym is the grass gym where I have the advantage. I use Paper, who doesn't quite manage to take his Jumpluff out with a Fire Fang. However, it does knock it low enough for it to be in healing range, and that means it's safe for me to use a Howl. And after this Howl, this means Paper is now strong enough to sweep his entire team with Fire Fangs. Thank God this is the gym where I overleveled, as we could have had a massive trouble if it had been other ones. Branch then decides that it wants to evolve into a Delphox, and Charcoal gets a bit jealous, therefore becomes the beast that is Charizard. We then have to deal with some Team Flare shenanigans who were responsible for the power outage in Lumiose City. After that, the game figured we might have a bit of an ego, therefore it decided to check that by making us feel inadequate. Well, I have a bit of pride to restore, so let's take on the next gym leader, being Clemon. I lead with Branch as he leads with Emolga. I opt to start off by using Mystical Fire as this lowers special attack, but he doesn't end up using the Volt Switch like I thought he was going to. This means I've knocked it low, and after a battle of him healing up with some Hyper Potions, I do eventually take it out. Next up is the Magneton. Now this thing has Sturdy, so can survive an attack. However, all it does is set up an electric terrain, therefore I take it out with 0 damage from it. After that, all that's left is his Helioisk. Now, even with the electric terrain, when I use Mystical Fire, I lower its special attack, therefore it's not strong enough to take me out. Unless, of course, it gets a crit. Oh, that was such an unnecessary loss. Talk about being punished for relying on dropped stats. Thankfully enough though, we have actually got him down to half health at this point, and this means Paper is free to come on in and take him out with a Fire Fang. We beat the gym, but at what cost? We then meet Professor Sycamore in Lysander Cafe, where he's talking to Lysander himself. Now, I don't know what it is about this guy, but I'm getting some weird vibes. Something kinda similar to...
I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them.
After that, we go into a haunted mansion and get told a story about it. A horde of faceless men. Oh, that is actually quite creepy. After this, we've got the next gym battle being the Fairy Gym. I start off with Gas, who uses a Yawn versus the Mawile in order to get it to sleep. Then, once it's asleep, it's time to bring in Hay. Hay is now able to set up a few sword stances while only taking minor damage from the Mawile. And then, on the turn I'm about to take it out, I opt to use a Roost just to stay healthy. She then sends out Mr. Mime, but Mr. Mime has really weak defense, so we take it down with ease. And then comes out her Sylveon. Now, this thing is actually tanky enough to be able to take a hit from us. However, it opts just to use Charm to lower our attack, but it doesn't lower it enough where we're not going to two-shot it, therefore we can take this thing down easy enough. I then have the joy of getting lost in the Pokeball factory, and after I make it through and save him from Team Flare, I get given a big bag of Nuggies. Everyone prefers Nuggies over balls any day. Yeah, Lysander really is paralleling to a few people that I can think of. I then can make my way to the Lost Hotel where we can get our next encounter being a Litwick. I catch it and give it the obvious name of Candle, and then we give it a few levels in order for it to evolve into a Chandelure. We then have the joy of saving a frozen tree from Team Flare. Now, this is probably the only thing Team Flare have a chance of being dangerous against, because obviously 4 times weak. Whee! I then go and look at a crystal which looks like it was designed back in the Lara Croft days. And with that, we can go through Doctor Strange's world and on to take on the next gym leader. Olympia starts off with Sigilif as I start off with Gas. Obviously, the first thing I'm gonna do is use a Yawn. I then know he's gonna go for a Psychic, therefore I get a free switch into Paper. Now, even though I let off 2 howls, it must be in a deep sleep as the Sigilif doesn't manage to wake up and I can take it out in 1. She then sends out Slowking, but it falls to just 1 faint attack. And lastly, we have her Meowstic, but it's nowhere near as bulky as a Slowking, so I think you can see what happens to it. Lysander then interrupts us yet again.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
And with that news, it's time to go and smash a few rocks to get our next encounter being Slugma. It gets caught and given the name Cardboard. We then get some bad vibes from some furniture, so we decide to push it out of our way. Cardboard does then evolve into a Macago, and that means we're ready for the fight with Lysander. Start off as usual with Gas, who decides to give it the old Yawn, and then once that's done, we get to bring out Charcoal. All he needs to do to win this fight is Mega Evolve and set up a few Sword Stance. After that, it is time to sweep. They really should have put this battle a bit earlier in the game, especially with how easy it is at this point. We then get the joy of beating down Team Flare members until they give us an elevator key. And it turns out Lysander was made to feel inferior by this guy as well, so he's locked him away. And I'll tell you what, after the story he gives and how boring it was, he's in the right to keep him there. We then get the joy of being able to push the button to introduce the new attraction into Geosenge Town. Normally the duties of a mayor, but I'll go and take it. We then run into Lysander yet again, but this battle I use the exact same strategy as the last one, so I'm just going to skip past it. So, you really think you can beat us?
Obviously.
Are you guys really surprised that you've lost at this point? We then get to unleash the legendary Pokemon that is Xerneas from his prison. Now, this thing I'm pretty confident we could take down with ease. However, this game requires you to catch the legendary, therefore I just throw the Master Ball at it. Lysander then decides he wants to go from Emperor to Dr. Octavius, and that means we've got to battle him again. He starts off with Mindfu as I lead with Hay. Hay decides to use a fly which is more than powerful enough to take this thing down in one. And at this point, he decides to bring out his Pyro. That means it's safe for me to bring in Gas and use a Yawn. From there, we're too low, therefore we need to bring out Charco. He manages to set up 2 Swords Dance in the time while this Pyro's sleeping, and then finish it off with a Wing Attack. He then sends out his Honchkrow, who obviously manages to go down in 1 attack. But after this, he brings out his Gyarados. Now, because Gyarados has Intimidate, I'm actually at a point where I cannot one-shot this thing. However, I thought of this. Now, you might have noticed I have yet to Mega Evolve. This is because Charizard at this point is weak to a Water-type attack. However, once he Mega Evolves and gains that Dragon type, it becomes neutral. And since an Aqua Tail normally would have taken us out, that's exactly what his Gyarados goes for as we Mega Evolve to give us that type neutrality, which manages to let us live an attack. From there, we're faster than it, and we've done more than half damage, therefore, Lysander is taken down. For some reason, being beaten down gives him this weird self-sense of righteousness. Like, you're 100% the bad guy here, you can't just turn it around now and say you're innocent. And on top of that, you are solely responsible for a massive crater in a town. Now, that's going to be some structural damages to some homes around there, and you're gonna have to pay for it. Anyway, we can carry on a bit further, and that means we can get our next encounter being a Torkoal. It gets the name Log, and now we can carry on towards the 8th gym. We then battle Sycamore, but this guy really needs to stick to being a professor instead of trying to be a trainer, as he really sucks. At this point in the game, we've now managed to get our hands on a Duskstone, therefore we can throw it onto our candle and get ourselves a Chandelure. We then progress onto the bridge where we have the Gauntlet battle. Now, the first 2 of them were actually incredibly easy, so I'm just going to skip past them. But the third one actually did cause me a bit of trouble. He begins with Raichu as I begin with Paper. I do some serious damage with a Crunch, but unfortunately for me, he decides to use Nuzzle, which paralyzes me, making me slower. He then hits me for major damage with a Thunder, but it's not enough to stop me from taking him out on the next turn. And then out comes his Aerodactyl. This means I decide to switch into Gas as Paper at this point is too flimsy to take a hit. But on the turn we get switched in, he does manage to confuse us. I decide to risk it and take the chance, and he hits us heavy with an Ancient Power as I hit myself. He then goes for another Ancient Power, and obviously this time he deserved to get the 10% chance to boost every single one of his stats. Thankfully though, this time I break through my confusion, and that means I get off a Yawn. I then bring out Candle, who gets hit for some insanely heavy damage thanks to another crit, but this time he has fallen to sleep. He's guaranteed to stay asleep this first turn, so I can hit him quite heavy with a Shadow Ball, and then it all comes down to the next turn. If he manages to stay asleep, then we can take him out. If not, then we lose. Yes, he stayed asleep, and that means we can use one more Shadow Ball and take him out. After this, all that he's got left is his Florges, and we can bring in Hay and deal with it no trouble. We then get reminded of our humble beginnings with this little Fletchling, and he gives us a pretty wing. This gives me plenty of confidence and means I can now go on to take on Wulfric. Wulfric leads with a Bomber Snow as I lead with Paper. Obviously, Paper just needs to use one Fire Fang and take it down. After that, he decides to send out his Cryogonal. Unfortunately for us, a Fire Fang isn't quite enough to take it out in one, and we get confused. Now, if the previous battles of this run have taught me anything, I really can't be chancing confusion so much, Therefore, I decide it's time to switch out. I opt to bring in Candle as I think it's going to be the best choice. He does manage to heal on that switch in, but it doesn't really matter to us too much because even though we don't end up one-shotting it, it does incredibly low damage with its Ice Beam. I do notice though I'm doing less damage than Paper did, therefore I opt to bring him back out. Of course, on that turn though, I am hit with an Ice Beam and it freezes me. Even getting bad luck at the easy gyms. Come on, game. Anyway, obviously because of this freeze, I can't stay in, therefore I opt to switch out to Gas. Gas finally finishes this pesky thing off, and then out comes his Avalugg. It decides to go for a curse as we knock it into the red. He then heals it up with a Hyper Potion, but I find out this was actually a range as we take it out in one more hit. And that only means one thing. We've now got all 8 gym badges and we can slide right on out of here. Now, we've got to go through Victory Road and we actually are only allowed 5 Pokemon as we need Pokemon to use Surf and Waterfall. Plus, the first battle is against a guy that's kind of designed for countering our team. However, it's not to worry as I found a counter for him. He starts off with a Carbink, which obviously I'm going to use a Yawn on in order to get to sleep. Once it's asleep, it is free for me to bring in Candle. Then, from that point, all we need to do is use Calm Mind until we're knocked just under half health. This lets us one-shot both his Carbink and his Kingdra. Because we left ourselves on somewhat decent health and we'd raised our special defense, the Raichu's Thunderbolt does next to nothing to us and we take it out in one. This means we can finally climb the fabled staircase. And we do progress a little further into a Serena fight. However, in this battle, she's just as easy as she ever was. Therefore, there's no point me going through it. But with her down, that does mean one thing. We are finally ready to face the Elite Four. Now, you can battle these Elite Four in any order you want, and obviously the one I decide to battle first is gonna be the Steel type. He leads with Klefki as I lead with Gas, and then all we need to do is use a Yawn and then a string of Confides. This is because Klefki only knows special moves, therefore the lower we get its special attack, the better. Once its special attack is all the way lowered, we are free to get a switch into Candle. From there, Candle can set up a substitute and then proceed to use an array of Carmines. These Carmines add to the bulk as we're getting special attack and special defense. Once we've got enough of these set up, I'm ready to use one Flame Burst to finish the Klefki off. And then out comes the reason we set up the substitute. We've got the Probopass, which is actually pretty powerful, and because of its sturdy, it's guaranteed to get a hit off on us. However, I definitely misjudge how much our defense raise means because he actually doesn't even manage to break the substitute. After that, Wilkstrom tries to keep him healthy by healing him, but it's just a matter of time until we take it down. Scissor comes out, but obviously Flame Burst is 4 times effective, so we'll take it out with ease. And then we've got the Aegislash. Its first turn, it decides to use a King Shield, but all it's doing is delaying the inevitable. On the very next turn, I can use a Shadow Ball and it's bye-bye Sword. With him down, I decide the next easiest one to take down is gonna be Malva. She thinks she's the better Fire-type trainer, but she has something to learn yet. She leads with Pyro and I choose to lead with Charcoal. I then Mega Evolve as I'm using a few Swords Dance. Because of Swords Dance, this is going to want to make her use Noble Roar in order to lower our attack. Therefore, I know I can get to +5 for free. And then, obviously, we're at +4, so we've got triple attack, and a Dragon Claw takes down every single one of her Pokemon. Now, there's only a choice between Water and Dragon, so obviously we're going to try take down the Dragons first. She leads with Dragalge, and I lead with Gas. Now, I know this thing's first attack is going to be a Surf. Therefore, I use this opportunity to set up a Sunny Day and halve its damage. I then know she's not going to do any major damage, so I'm safe to set up a Yawn. And then, since she doesn't manage to do any major damage to me, I manage to get 2 Confides off to lower the special attack. Once this is low enough, it's time to bring out Candle again. And we can do the same strategy as last time. Use a substitute and set up a few Carmines. Now, the strategy was my last substitute would be set up before we take the Dragalge out and we would have it for the next Pokemon. Unfortunately for us though, some disaster strikes. She actually manages to get a crit off against us as we set up our last substitute. And because of the fact I forgot to put a citrus berry on this guy, this means we are now unable to set one up and just have to take him down. We then have the Altaria come out, but we're stronger than it and we can take it out in one. However, she also has the Pokemon Noivern. Now, this Noivern is 100% faster than us. This means it's going to get the opportunity to get a hit off on us. However, we're in luck. This thing only knows special moves, and because of the Calm Mines that I used earlier, my special defense is high enough where I can tank a hit from it. Obviously, once I get the turn to hit back, it's gone. And then last up is Druddigon, but this thing's slower than a tortoise. Therefore, we take it out with such ease. However, her defeated means we have something to dread, and that is Seabold and his water types. He leads with Chloritzer as I lead with Gas. Now, obviously he's going to start off by using a water move, therefore the smartest thing for me to do is use Sunny Day to stop it from taking me out. Oh no. The idea was we'd be able to yawn and maybe use a couple of confides, but that's been thrown out the window. Now, Gas is obviously the key for me setting up in most situations, so I can't afford to lose him. Therefore, I opt to bring out Log. I have taught Log Confide, but it only manages to get one of them off before it's knocked into the red, and I need to switch out again. He manages to do some pretty serious damage, as I only managed to get off one Acrobatics before being knocked into the red. However, at this point, we are faster than it, and the sun's run out. Therefore, we can't risk keeping it in, so we have to just take it out with another Acrobatics. He then sends out Barbaracle. Now, I need to be able to switch into this thing and get slightly set up. The only chance I have of doing that is by sacking a Pokemon. I have quite a long, hard think about who I'm going to need less for Diantha, and eventually I settle on Log. Therefore, I bring him out, and unfortunately, he's taken out. However, it wasn't in vain. This gives me a free switch into Charcoal. Charcoal can Mega Evolve and set up a Swords Dance at the same time. Once this is done, the Barbaracle is going to fall to a Dragon Claw, and then out comes the Gyarados. Now, this thing's Intimidate means that I've actually lost one of my stages of up to attack, and it knocks Dragon Claw from a guaranteed KO to a 50-50. 50% chance we live, 50% chance we die. I go for the Dragon Claw, but unfortunately, we get the wrong end of the coin and we don't quite take it out. This means all the Gyarados needs to use is one Earthquake and we're gone. That truly is a devastating loss for the team, and it's a fan favorite going down the drain. However, there is a slight silver lining. Hay is able to be switched in for free here, and the Gyarados is low enough where I know he's going to heal so I can set up a Swords Dance. This is great for us, as that means his Gyarados is going to go down to 1 Acrobatics, and then the Starmie that follows is going to have the exact same fate, and we've actually made it past him. That was absolutely devastating to our team taking that. But you know what they say, as one door closes, another one opens. We've got 4 Pokemon, and we're going into the champion fight against Diantha. Can we make it through, or will we lose? She opts to lead with Howlucha, and this means my best choice is to start off with Hay. We both seem to copy each other by using Swords Dance on the first turn. However, on the second, something changes. I decide to use a Swords Dance, but the Howlucha wants to go in for the attack. This obviously knocks me down low enough where I have no choice but to retaliate. Therefore, I use an Acrobatics to take it out. Next up, though, we have a really scary Pokemon to face, and that is Tyrantrum. Now, you might find it odd that I didn't take Howlucha down without taking any damage. There was actually a reasoning for this. With 2 Swords Dance, I can actually 2-shot the Tyrantrum. And I know this thing is going for Head Smash, which has a 20% chance to miss. That means if it's miss, I'm secured the victory and I can sweep from this point on. Of course, 20% is quite a low chance, and he does end up hitting, which takes us out. On the plus side though, this move comes with a hell of a kickback and he takes some severe recoil damage. Now, obviously because of that recoil, he's knocked into the red and I know she's going to heal. Therefore, it's time to bring Gas out. All Gas has to do is set up 1 Yawn, and then it has the joy of facing down the Tyrantrum. Unfortunately, the best case scenario here is for me to sack him and let him be taken down. As much as a shame this is, it is necessary for us to progress, as this means he's fallen asleep on the turn that Paper comes in. This means I've got 100% certainty of Paper being able to set up one nasty plot, and with that nasty plot, we're in some luck. That means our Dark Pulse is enough to finally take down this stomping menace. We then have Goodra. Now, this thing is actually able to survive a Dark Pulse from us. And it should have actually done a bit of damage, but thankfully we got the flinch. She then ends up using a full restore with it. And on the next turn, we actually managed to get a crit. This doesn't really affect us as we're faster, so we'd have taken it out, taking no damage anyway. However, it does save me a bit of time in the healing back and forth. We then have Aurorus come out. Now, I know I'm going to hit this thing incredibly heavy, but I don't actually have enough power to take it out at this point. Even with the black glasses, we're only doing around 80 to 90% damage. The idea is we'll knock it low, she'll be forced to heal, and then we can set up a nasty plot and carry on. However, it turns out we weren't able to do that as we actually land yet another critical hit. This results in one-shotting it, but it does mean we don't have enough firepower for God of War yet. Thankfully though, there is one Pokemon between me and God of War, being Gourgeist. Now, I'm sure you can tell looking at Gourgeist, it's feeling a bit lonely. Therefore, it uses a move to give us the Ghost type as we set up another nasty plot. This means we take 0 damage from it and we can take it out the next turn with a Dark Pulse. And it also means one terrible thing for Diantha. She has now sealed her own fate. We have enough firepower so when the God of War comes out, we hit it with a Dark Pulse and finish it off in one. Even with a full team, these fire types are too hot to handle and we fly on through it. Yeah, so that's it. We're now the champion of Kalos with only fire type. I really hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Thank you for your time and goodbye.